Let's get a little preview of that upcoming meeting with our international affairs commentator, Doug Herbert, who joins me now on set. So, Doug, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is having to deal with, Trump's constant hot and cold stance. But where does the US president actually stand, especially after his phone call with Vladimir Putin?
Yeah, he's entering this meeting later with Zelensky basically injected with a new and very strong dose of propaganda and misinformation and toxic information served to him straight up, unadulterated by the Kremlin propaganda machine, more specifically by a man named Yuri Ushakov. Now, Ushakov is Putin's foreign policy advisor, his whisperer, if you will. He is the one who presented the version, at least Russia's version, of what Putin said to Trump during their phone call. What did he say? In other words, what did Trump get from Putin? He got a version according to which Ukrainian forces are allegedly using, quote, terrorist methods to strike civilian and energy infrastructure in Russia because Russia holds the strategic initiative in the war so far. He said that because of these strikes, Russia has to respond accordingly. Because of the Ukrainian strikes, Russia is responding. That is the version served up, what Putin tells Trump, as given to us by Yuri Ushakov, the foreign policy advisor. The reality couldn't be further from that. So in other words, Trump is entering the meeting with Zelensky with a skewed, a misrepresentation, if you will, perspective of what's happening actually in this war. The reality is that, the factual, objective reality is that the Ukrainian forces are using their weaponry to strike at mostly energy infrastructure, military targets in Russia, with the aim of trying to degrade Russia's ability to fund its war machine and to fuel its fighting forces. Russia is using its drones and missiles, which we have been seeing in an increasing tempo and crescendo, raining down across Ukraine, across cities in Ukraine, from the south to the east to Kiev itself, striking at civilians and civilian infrastructure. This is where Yuri Ushakov's version of what Putin told Trump is completely muddying the reality of what is actually happening in the world and giving Trump a complete misrepresentation of the battlefield. Since there's an open source investigative unit, it's called Tochny, and it's reported that on September 28th, Russian drone strikes, it reported back on September 28th that Russian drone strikes have caused nearly 2,900, just under 2,900 civilian deaths in just one area of Ukraine alone, Kherson Oblast, since 2023. So we're talking in the past 2 years. That gives you a sense of how lopsided the war has been and how misrepresented, I will go out on the limb and say it, misrepresented it is by the Russian side. So Putin gets on the phone with Trump and is giving him a skewed version of the war, which Trump, from all appearances, seems to sort of swallow, whether willingly or not. And then what does Trump do? He comes away from that phone call less inclined to send missiles, i.e. Tomahawk missiles, Kiev's way, to provide those missiles which Zelensky wants. Putin's propaganda and the way he presents it in a phone call is very effective. He basically told Trump, nothing you do by sending those missiles, those Tomahawk missiles, if you do that, it will not change the battlefield situation, and it will cause substantial damage to U.S.-Russia relations, i.e. economic relations.
So given all of this, what does Volodymyr Zelensky want, and what is he likely to get out of this meeting?
Well, first, Zelensky has a de-brainwashing job to do at this meeting. He has to basically undo everything that Putin, via his foreign policy advisor I was just talking about, Yuri Ushakov, told the world and told Trump on this phone call, i.e. that Ukrainian forces are using terrorist methods to strike at Russia, and that Russia is simply responding in kind, trying to defend itself against the big, bad, evil Ukrainian giant that represents a clear and present danger to its national security. So he has to undo that. He has to first somehow reprogram, feed in some reliable, solidly sourced information on what's really happening. Mr. President, I know this is what you heard on the phone. The reality is this, Mr. Trump. This is what's happening right now on the battlefield. As we can show you and we can see you, and your own intelligence agencies will tell you if you bother to listen to them. So he's going to do that. He's also, yes, obviously going to still make the case for the Tomahawk, saying he needs them more than ever, even if, like as I just said, Donald Trump, having spoken to Putin, is now less inclined to provide those long-range missiles, at least as of today. Trump can turn on a dime, as we know, and he could change his view. I'll say one last thing. I think Zelensky is also going to do what almost every other leader who meets with Trump tries to adopt as a strategy: cajole and flatter and convince. He's going to play to the fact that Donald Trump is fresh from casting himself, Donald Trump, that is, as a bringer of eternal peace to the Middle East, and that he could do the same thing in Ukraine now. He could do in Ukraine what he did in the Mideast. He has the justice and strength to do it. He's the only one uniquely able to do that. Please, Mr. President, do in the Mideast, do now for us in Ukraine what you just did in the Mideast. Use your incredible, invincible powers and help us.
All right, thank you very much for that, Doug. We'll, of course, be keeping a very close eye on that meeting as it gets underway later today.